On a crisp spring morning, sunlight streamed through the windows onto my white marble kitchen counter. I was making pancakes for my daughter Lily while gazing out at the Chestnut Hill streetscape. The sweet aroma of maple syrup mingled with the rich scent wafting from the coffee maker, creating our usual pleasant morning atmosphere. The trees in the garden were dressed in fresh green leaves, and I could see the pink cherry blossoms swaying in the neighbor's yard. Cars had already begun their morning commute in the neighborhood, and I could hear church bells tolling in the distance. This upscale residential area always awakens quietly but surely each morning. "Mom, I'm going to nail my science presentation today." Lily's voice, as she bounded down the stairs, brought energy to the kitchen. Just seeing her innocent 8-year-old smile warms my heart. We had stayed up late last night helping her practice, and the laminated poster with diagrams would surely impress her teacher. "Yes, I'm sure your presentation will be wonderful. But please don't run on the stairs," I cautioned, though I couldn't help but smile. Her uniform was perfectly pressed, and her golden hair was beautifully braided. I had gotten up early to do it for her. A small pearl brooch, her Christmas present, sparkled at her white blouse collar. "Good morning, my angels." James appeared just as I was placing the last pancake on the plate. As a skilled investment banker at Goldman Sachs, he was dressed in his usual perfectly fitted expensive suit, with the Rolex I had given him for his IPO celebration gleaming on his wrist. His handsome profile still makes my heart skip a beat, just as it did when we first met. The dining table was already set with fresh blueberries, whipped cream, crispy bacon, and Lily's favorite scrambled eggs. A bottle of organic orange juice from Whole Foods completed the spread. "Daddy, can we watch a movie together tonight?" Lily looked up at her father with hopeful eyes. The way she gently tugged at his expensive suit sleeve always touched my heart deeply. "I'm sorry, sweetheart, I have an important meeting tonight. But let's spend the weekend together. How about going to the zoo?" James answered while gently patting her head. As I poured hot coffee into my husband's favorite Starbucks tumbler, I was once again struck by how blessed my life was. My career as a pediatrician at Boston General Hospital was fulfilling, and family life was going smoothly. Last year, I served as PDA president, and at the hospital, I had been entrusted with mentoring young doctors. While balancing work and family isn't easy, every day is precious. At breakfast, Lily chatted enthusiastically about school while James occasionally nodded as he read the Wall Street Journal. This ordinary morning scene was our daily routine. After breakfast, we each headed out to start our day. Lily to Beaver Country Day School, one of the most prestigious schools in our upscale neighborhood. After school, she had ballet lessons at Boston Ballet School and swimming classes at the YMCA. My husband to his large glass-walled office in the financial district. And I to the hospital where my little patients awaited. That afternoon, I was finishing up an examination of a 3-year-old patient in my pediatric office. The little boy had an ear infection with a fever, but his symptoms were already improving. "The fever isn't concerning. Let's monitor him for another few days," I was explaining to his mother when suddenly my phone rang. The mother looked slightly startled at the ringtone echoing in the examination room. Usually, I would ignore calls during examinations, but recognizing the school's number, I instinctively answered. Dr. Watson, I'm terribly sorry. Lily. Lily has had an accident. The school nurse, Ms. Jones, was speaking with a trembling voice. Her distress was unusual for someone typically so composed, and I felt the blood drain from my face. The afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows suddenly felt cold. Though I felt my strength ebbing away, I struggled to maintain my professional composure as I confirmed the situation. She's being transported to your hospital by ambulance now. She fell from playground equipment. Before she could finish speaking, I was already on my feet. Papers rustled on my desk, and my stethoscope clinked against my white coat. I deeply apologize, but this is an emergency. I apologized to my patient's mother and rushed out into the hallway in my white coat. The hospital's long corridors seemed to stretch endlessly. There was no time to wait for the elevator, so I ran down the emergency stairs. I could feel my legs shaking and my heart pounding as I headed straight for the emergency room. These stairs I normally walked without a thought felt unusually long today. Nurses I passed in the hallway looked at me with concern. I heard someone ask, "Dr. Watson, are you all right?" but I didn't even have the composure to respond. Dr. Brown met me as I burst into the emergency room. She had been my friend since medical school. "Amy, stay calm. She's in the treatment room now. She's fully conscious." When I opened the treatment room door, there was my little girl lying on the bed. Lily's uniform was dirty with soil, and blood was flowing from her forehead. The braid I had carefully done this morning was undone, her golden hair disheveled. However, she was fully conscious. "Mommy. I'm sorry. I climbed too high, we were playing hide and seek." I gripped my daughter's hand and whispered, "It's okay, Mommy's here." I could feel her small hand was cold and trembling. The nurses immediately began preparing and arrangements for X-rays were being made. The monitor's warning beeps occasionally sounded, and the footsteps of busy medical staff echoed through the room. "There's significant bleeding. Let's prepare for a transfusion just in case," Dr. Brown ordered. This was a routine procedure, and as a doctor, I had given the same order countless times. It was a standard precautionary measure for accidents involving trauma. However, this time, as a mother, I felt an overwhelming anxiety in my chest. And that anxiety would prove to be justified. I noticed Dr. Brown's expression change distinctly as she looked at the test results. She consulted with other medical staff in hushed tones and kept reviewing the test results repeatedly. Then she turned to me. There was clear confusion in her eyes. It was an unusually disturbed expression I had never seen on my normally composed friend. "Amy, we need to talk." She drew me to a corner of the treatment room and began speaking in a lowered voice. After making sure no one was around, she said, "About Lily's blood type, it doesn't match yours and your husband's." It took me several seconds to comprehend the meaning of those words. As a doctor, I perfectly understood the laws of blood type inheritance. But there was a strange time distortion before that knowledge connected to the current situation. What do you mean? Just then, the treatment room door burst open, and James rushed in. His usually perfectly styled hair was disheveled, and his expensive suit was wrinkled. Lily. Amy. I approached my husband with visible distress and relayed what Dr. Brown had told me, whispering to ensure our daughter couldn't hear. My husband's expression immediately changed. That's impossible. James's voice echoed through the treatment room. The nurse preparing the floor stopped at his outburst. Did you do something? I stepped back in surprise at my husband's vehemence. James had never raised his voice before. He had always been gentlemanly and maintained his composure in any situation. What are you saying? That I did something. Did you cheat? With someone? My husband's eyes were filled with an emotion I had never seen before. At that moment, the treatment room door opened without a knock, and 2 police officers entered. The older detective wore a gray suit, while the younger one was in a navy uniform. Mr. James Watson. The senior detective pulled out a document. Please review this. As my husband read the document, I could see the color drain from his face. His hands trembled, and his lips turned white. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his perfect tie had become crooked. The police investigation was more extensive than expected. Detective Murphy, with eyes as sharp as ring gems, meticulously examined hospital records one by one. My work shifts, Lily's birth records, even security camera footage. However, many of the records from 8 years ago had been lost during digitization, and what remained was fragmentary. The record-keeping system changed, explained the head of medical records management. When we introduced electronic medical records in 2017, many paper records. As I listened to these words, I stared out the examination room window. The spring sunlight still shone brightly, but nothing was the same anymore. Lily had already been discharged after a week's hospitalization, but the mystery of her blood type cast a large shadow over our daily life. The investigation expanded to interviewing people involved at the time. Doctors, nurses, and even administrative staff who had worked in the obstetrics ward. After 8 years, many staff members had retired or transferred, but Detective Murphy persistently tracked people down. I remember that day. That testimony came from an unexpected source. Sarah Jenkins, who had been a new nurse at the time, now worked at a small suburban clinic. During police questioning, she spoke with a trembling voice. Head nurse Carol was acting very strange that day. She kept going in and out of the baby's room late at night. When I heard that name, my spine froze. Carol Martin. The head nurse of the obstetrics ward 8 years ago. She had been known for her gentle demeanor, high reliability, and efficient work. The investigation took a new turn. The police thoroughly analyzed security camera records and scrutinized the duty roster from that time. They discovered unusual patterns in Carol's work schedule. There's evidence she frequently returned to the hospital at night, separate from her regular shifts, Detective Murphy explained. His blue eyes had the characteristic gleam of someone who had found something significant. Just then, events took an unexpected turn. One night, As I was watching television at home, my husband returned from work earlier than usual. His typically neat tie was loose, and his face was ashen. "Amy, we need to talk." Sitting at the kitchen table, my husband reached for a glass of water, but his trembling hands caused it to spill. I silently watched him. Actually, 8 years ago, I had a relationship with Carol. That confession shocked me deeply. My husband continued, with a dark expression, occasionally stumbling over his words. "It was a brief affair. I ended everything just before Lily was born. I tried to completely forget about her existence." I was speechless. The trust we had built throughout our married life seemed to crumble like a sandcastle in an instant. But there was something else that concerned me more. Was Carol, at that time? She might have been pregnant. But I never heard anything about that from her. I tried to forget everything. My husband's confession brought a new development to the investigation. Detective Murphy began tracking Carol Martin's movements more closely. They discovered she had suddenly resigned from the hospital 8 years ago and moved to another state. As the investigation progressed, changes were occurring around us as well. At the hospital, nurses' attitudes toward me changed, and colleagues awkwardly kept their distance. At Lily's school, rumors seemed to be spreading among the parents. One day, Detective Murphy visited the hospital again. "We've located Carol Martin," his voice carried an unprecedented certainty. "She did give birth at that time." The air in the examination room seemed to freeze at the detective's words. Outside the window, dark clouds were gathering as if a spring storm was approaching. The truth that would greatly change our lives was approaching with those dark clouds. At night, as I watched Lily's sleeping face, I was deep in thought. Regardless of blood ties, this child is my precious daughter. But if somewhere else, there was a child connected to me by blood. Complex emotions constricted my heart. The interrogation room at Massachusetts State Police Headquarters was smaller than I had imagined. Pale gray walls, a dark desk, and a large one-way mirror. From the observation room next door, I watched Carol Martin's interrogation. She maintained the same well-groomed appearance as 8 years ago, but the bags under her eyes and deep wrinkles told of the weight of these years. She sat in the chair with a tense expression, occasionally reaching for a white paper cup of water. "Ms. Martin," Detective Murphy's voice echoed through the speakers. "Let's discuss again your work at Boston General Hospital 8 years ago." Carol nodded silently. Her former dignity as head nurse had faded, and she seemed somehow diminished. The pearl bracelet on her wrist trembled slightly. "Can you explain about your night shift on April 15th? The moment she heard that date, Carol's expression subtly changed. I could tell. Reading patients' subtle facial changes was a skill I had developed over many years as a doctor. It was a normal night shift. Her voice was hoarse. "Nothing special." "Is that really true?" Detective Murphy placed a photo on the desk. It was a printed security camera image. The date and time were clearly visible. "This shows you entering the nursery. At a time outside normal rounds." Carol's fingers gripped the paper cup tightly. Some water spilled, creating a stain on her navy blue blouse. You were pregnant at the time. Detective Murphy pulled out more documents. And you gave birth on the same day. The air in the room seemed to freeze instantly. Carol's shoulders began to tremble slightly. It was James's child. Her voice quivered slightly. But he refused to acknowledge it. When I heard those words, my heart beat strongly. I could see my own pale reflection in the observation room glass. At that time, Carol stumbled over her words and took a deep sigh. I had lost my mind. Her confession continued like a broken dam. The events in the nursery, the baby switch, and the falsification of records. It wasn't all meticulously planned, but rather snap decisions made in a desperate situation. I thought I had the right to have a happy family too. Large tears fell from her eyes. But every day was hell. Raising someone else's child, as my own. The fluorescent light in the interrogation room coldly illuminated Carol's tears. Next to her, a young female detective was taking detailed notes. Your biological daughter was raised by the Watson family. Detective Murphy's voice remained calm. And Lily Watson was actually. Yes, Carol's voice trembled slightly. Every day, I looked for photos of that family in the newspapers. I cut out every magazine article about charity parties. Those words constricted my chest. To think that someone had been watching our happy life from afar for these 8 years, indescribable emotions welled up inside me. Outside the interrogation room, spring twilight was deepening. The sky visible through the window was dimming. The footsteps of busy police officers echoed in the hallway of the police station. Could you explain in detail about the falsification of records? Carol, holding the paper cup with trembling hands, began to explain about those times. Using her position as head nurse, she had altered birth records and concealed evidence during the confusion of the electronic medical record system transition. But some paper records remained, Detective Murphy said. Your birth record and the baby's footprints. The DNA test results became decisive evidence. Scientific numbers exposed the truth of 8 years. I stared at the test report. The cold array of type was about to significantly change our lives. Carol's confession in the interrogation room continued for 3 more hours. Throughout, she repeatedly sobbed, sometimes stumbling over words, as she continued to talk about that fateful night 8 years ago. That night, I had 2 choices, Carol confessed with an exhausted expression. Either give up everything, or. Each time her voice trailed off, the air in the interrogation room grew heavier. Detective Murphy occasionally nodded, quietly listening to her words. My reflection in the observation room glass looked like a different person. Gone was the confident expression of a pediatrician, replaced by the bewildered face of a mother standing still. On a May morning after the rain, we met at a suburban park. The trees were vibrantly green, and spring sunlight gently illuminated the rain-wet leaves. Next to me on the bench, Lily clutched my hand tightly. I'm nervous. Her voice mixed anxiety with anticipation. Today, we were meeting Lily's real family for the first time. From a distance, I could see a family approaching. Carol's sister's family, bringing Emily, my biological daughter whom they had raised. Mrs. Watson, Carol's sister Jennifer, called out. "Thank you for waiting." Behind her stood a girl about Lily's age. Golden hair, clear searching eyes, and a nose bridge just like mine. It was like looking in a mirror. "Hello," Emily greeted with a slightly nervous expression. I wanted to meet you." At that moment, tears welled up in my eyes. Emotions surged as if to fill the 8-year void. "So did I answered while gently placing my hand on her shoulder. Lily stared intently at Emily. They were the same age, in the same grade. But until now, they had walked completely different life paths. "Do you take ballet too?" Lily asked timidly. "Yes, but I prefer jazz dance." Emily's expression softened slightly. The spring breeze ruffled their hair, and dappled sunlight gently lit their cheeks. This meeting was filled with the promise of a new beginning. The following months were a continuous series of changes. Court procedures, psychological counseling, and discussions between the two families. Sometimes there were tears, sometimes arguments. "Let's think about what's best for the children," Jennifer's suggestion became our guiding principle. During summer vacation, the two families decided to stay at a beachside cottage. Lily and Emily got along like lifelong friends. They searched for seashells on the beach, played in the waves, and wrote in their diaries together at sunset. "Mom, we've become a special kind of family, haven't we?" Lily whispered one night. I nodded deeply at those words. Blood ties don't necessarily determine the depth of love. What matters is the feeling of caring for each other and the will to walk together. The social impact was greater than expected. This incident brought major reforms to the hospital system. The newborn management system was completely revamped, with double and triple check systems introduced. The media covered this story daily, and voices calling for medical safety grew stronger. Carol was sentenced to 7 years in prison. Her nursing license was revoked, and she was required to participate in rehabilitation programs. "I will spend my life making amends," she stated on the final day of the trial. Later, she sent letters from prison. "Every day, I face my mistakes. I irreversibly changed the lives of 2 families. But knowing that Lily and Emily are growing up happily is my only solace." Reading the letter, I was filled with complex emotions. Anger, sadness, and a strange sense of gratitude. While her actions could never be forgiven, in a way, I was blessed to have 2 daughters. James and my relationship also began to heal gradually. My husband was making an effort to accept our new family form with deep regret. "From now on, I want to live honestly," his words carried sincere determination. As autumn deepened and the trees began to turn red, we purchased a new house. We chose a location halfway between the 2 families so Lily and Emily could easily visit each other. The spacious living room is decorated with photos of both daughters. Pictures from ballet recitals, beach memories, and recent family photos. They seem to symbolize the beginning of our new story. Life has unexpected gifts, I wrote in my diary one night. Outside the window, the full moon shone quietly. Its light gently illuminated our room, as if blessing our new life.